I'm Neetha Bidway, and this is Good Revenue. We're going to talk about nuclear weapons testing today because it unexpectedly has been in the news recently. And I wanted to lay out a case for how I think we should consider this issue. First off, the United States is the inventor of the nuclear weapon thanks to the Manhattan Project during World War II. And that was as a result of our arms race with Nazi Germany. That was a massive project. We spent $2 billion, which is about $30 billion in today's money, and it involved about 131,000 Americans. So it was a massive project, and as a result of it, we ended up building one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world. Point number two, that arsenal is the second largest, and it's at about 3,700 warheads today. It's down from the high of 30,000 warheads in the 60s, and that is actually a good thing. Because at some point we realized, as did our primary adversary at the time, the Soviet Union and others, that it was not a great idea to have thousands of warheads, both to manage, but also to protect and to secure. And so in addition to a massive and expensive weapons development program over the course of decades, we've also had a very successful arms control movement as well. And many of the people that were advocates for that, including former US senators and others, were members of the military. These weren't random peaceniks. These were people that knew the devastating consequences of using nuclear weapons and knowing what those weapons could do. So this arsenal of ours is not only massive, but the point here is it doesn't matter if we have the most warheads in the world or some other number. We have enough to do lasting, likely irreversible damage to the planet and to any adversary. So the hope of everyone who has any sort of experience or thought about this is that we'll never have to use nuclear weapons again. That's certainly my hope. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, given the fact that we now have these weapons on hand, we have the responsibility of actually managing them. So as the United States, we are the leaders in testing and in weapons development. And what we do today is something called components testing. So at our national labs, they regularly test these devices, both in field tests, not of the nuclear elements, but other aspects of these weapons. And they do a lot of simulations through the Stockpile Stewardship program, which is really, really important. And the point of all of this is that we know our arsenal works. We don't have to check on the plutonium. It is good. It's very lethal. And we have done a lot of work over decades to make sure that that arsenal is modern and updated. We've done a lot of weapons development. Like, we are the best at this. Third, in addition to being the leader in weapons development and stockpile stewardship, we're also the world leader in testing. The United States has conducted 1,054 nuclear weapons tests. Russia has conducted somewhere around 715. China has done 47. And there are some other countries that have done illegal tests or other types of tests in their history. We've helped conduct tests for the United Kingdom. There's a bunch of other stuff there. But without a doubt, no one in the world has more performance data on these weapons than we do. We are the winners in testing. And this is important because we don't need to test more to know more. We already know everything we need to know. And if we had to use these in war, we would be fine. Again, planet probably wouldn't be. So the thing about this is, because we have so much data and we know that this works, we don't need to test more. The folks that need to test more are countries that don't have data, and therefore they don't know if their weapons are going to work. Say China, which hasn't had as many test conditions as we have, or countries like Russia that want to test because they think it makes them look strong, or they think it scares their enemies, or whatever other geopolitics angles they're working. So this isn't something that we need to worry about because we've already won when it comes to testing. Now, We have historically been pretty good about learning from our experience, even though we have made a lot of mistakes. One of the things that we learned is that atmospheric testing, which is the kind of thing you would see in the movie Oppenheimer, of like a huge warhead blowing up, or, again, the devastating photos and videos from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where we obviously detonated live weapons. You can see the power of atomics if you look at any photos or videos of this. And after the Cuban Missile Crisis, we made the determination that we would stop atmospheric testing, and we also banned the testing of nuclear weapons in space and underwater. In addition, there was a test in 1970 called Baneberry, and I highly recommend clicking on the link and looking at this video. It's on Wikipedia, and there's other sources too. This was a massive underground test, and it leaked. And so that's why it looks like it was an above-ground test. But as a result of this, a few years later, we banned large payload underground nuclear tests. We realized that the risks were too high and the reward wasn't sufficient. So it's something we said no to. Now, we also had discussions in this country and around the world about something called the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. We signed it in 1996, but we never ratified it. And we're one of just a few countries, including Russia, India, and some others, that never signed it. And suddenly this is all changing because now there's a discussion about whether or not we should be doing it. And if I leave you with any point today, it's that it's not in the interests of our country to do that, but it most certainly is to the advantage of others. One of the reasons that nuclear weapons testing, I think, is so challenging is that it isn't like other types of testing in that radiation is absolutely devastating and it has a lot of unintended consequences. And we learn those at our very great cost during our testing program. As I record this, the United States has paid out $2.6 billion to victims of nuclear weapons testing here in the United States. They're called Downwinders, and this program is called RECA. It's the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. There are about 40,000 people that have received payments as a result of this. And this is not sufficient because these are folks who have been suffering from things like thyroid cancer and leukemia and all sorts of other absolutely devastating illnesses, because radiation-linked illnesses are no joke. There are also many people who died far too young as a result of this. And the other part of it to keep in mind is this program is only available to residents of states like Utah, Nevada, and Colorado, New Mexico, a little bit of Texas. I might be forgetting one too, but it's just a few states and they're all in the West. The problem with radiation is it doesn't stay put. And because the testing took place in Nevada, this test site is just an hour north of Las Vegas, which is another reason why you might not want that right next to such a huge population center. But nonetheless, if you want to have a sense of how devastating and widespread the effect is of nuclear weapons testing, it's also worth taking a look at the National Cancer Institute's iodine 131 map. It shows exactly what the downstream effects are of nuclear weapons testing to devastating consequence. And you get a real sense of how widespread this has been. I think overall, the thing that I want to leave you with is that national security is an awesome responsibility, meaning it is awe-inspiring. It's a huge deal. And the state of the world is pretty chaotic and nerve-wracking today. And I know this is a lot of data, but the thing is that there is a lot of consequence and seriousness around this topic. The thing is that we learned to our great cost exactly what the consequences are and could be of nuclear weapons. We've used them in battle, and we've done testing over almost 7 decades now. We know a lot about them, and it is knowledge that's important to safeguard. Protecting national security is an immense responsibility, and resuming nuclear weapons testing is an extremely high-risk strategy with not a lot of rewards for us. So I hope that all this data is helpful. As always, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you here next week. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, leave us a review, subscribe to the show,
or check out another episode. We appreciate your support.